24 knots, over.
Costa Blanca means white coast, white like the facades of the houses. This area of Spain is above all colorful and diverse. Even the skyscrapers of Benidorm are perceived by many as splashes of color with breathtaking views. The Peñón de Fac is perhaps the most striking landmark on the Costa Blanca. Formerly a landmark for Phoenicians, Romans and Iberians, today for over 6 million visitors per year. A picture-perfect Spain, picturesque villages, great scenery, and an average of 300 days of sunshine. In Benidorm, people tend to spend their vacations living on top of each other instead of next to each other, and thus protect the environment. Because when tourists gather in one place, the surrounding area is not as overdeveloped. This leaves room for the original fishing villages. And for a pristine cliff with countless hidden coves. Benidorm is the tourist stronghold on the Costa Blanca. In summer, the population grows from 70,000 to almost 500,000 people, and almost all of them want to go to the beach. It's pretty hard to keep track of everything. A case for the police drone unit. With sophisticated technology, Paco Albero provides an overview and order at the same time. His drone is both a flying eye and a loudspeaker.
The
drone was designed especially for us. We had to tinker with it for a long time to figure out how to install a loudspeaker. Because if it's supposed to be loud, it needs a strong magnet, and that interferes with the electronics.
The bathing area is marked by a chain of buoys, beyond which bathing is taboo.
People should stay inside the barrier, because on the other side there are motorboats and accidents can happen. If the captains are not careful, the bathers can get into the propellers and seriously injure themselves.
And sure enough, one swimmer is already threatening to make the first border violation. The police are focusing on prevention. Paco is the pilot. His colleague Victor provides the voice from the air.
Attention, attention, this is the Benidorm police. Please stay in the bathing zone. Do not swim beyond the yellow buoys. There you go. He remains in the bathing area.
They first used the drone upon the breakout of the COVID pandemic to get people to obey the social distancing rules, with resounding success.
People respond as if God were speaking to them. Instructions that come from heaven seem to work immediately, much better than direct contact. Drones are very effective.
Costa Blanca is originally a term made up by tourism experts, which worked quite well. Since the 1960s, the coast, which is white in places after all, has been attracting more and more vacationers, especially Britons, French and Germans. Geographically, the White Coast begins north of Benidorm and ends 200 kilometers further south at the Mar Menor, a lagoon. Despite the tourist boom, original places with long traditions do still exist. Muslim Moors and Christian conquerors left their traces here. The towns and villages fortified and defensible, and from the 8th to the 15th century set the scene for a permanent feud between Muslims and Christians. This tradition is also still alive in Santa Pola. Moros y Cristianos, Moors and Christians, is the name of the town festival. Moors versus Christians would perhaps be more accurate. The Christians wanted to reconquer the city fortress. Reconquista is the Spanish term for it, because the Moors kept it occupied. Now, almost everyone in the city plays along, either as a Christian or a Moor. Which of the two parties one belongs to is determined by family tradition. Changing sides is unthinkable. Triana Bueno's family has been with the Moors for as long as she can remember, hence her oriental costume.
In a moment, the Christians will begin the reconquest of the fort. Yesterday, we, the Moors, occupied it. Today, it's the other way around. So the battle for the city is about to begin.
Cousin Jose gets to play the leader of the Moors this year. He's excited. His big appearance is about to follow. His counterpart is the Embajador de los Cristianos, the ambassador of the Christians.
Open the gate.
Save your breath. Only over our dead bodies will the gate open.
Go into battle for Jesus. May you pay for your foolish decision with your blood.
The weapons are not historically correct. The fights between Moors and Christians were fought at that time primarily with the sword. Anyway, the main thing is that it's loud.
For us from Santa Pola, this festival is of great importance. Ever since we were children, we have looked forward to the first 3 days of September. We've grown into this tradition and culture.
In a rather idiosyncratic interpretation of historical facts, the reconquests of the fortress culminates in a duel. The winner is actually determined in advance.
Every year we cheer for our fighter, the Moor, but he has never won. That's really sad.
But this time the Moor brings the Christian smoothly to the ground. Briefly, a historic turnaround seems possible. But then things take their usual course.
The battle is over. The Christians have won again.
But unlike the real Reconquista, the great reconciliation begins now. The most important festive day for Triana and her friends is yet to come. Tomorrow is the big women's parade, and for it they will transform themselves into Oriental princesses.
The best part is meeting all my girlfriends again. We tell each other what happened in the last year, and we have a lot of fun. Without our husbands or fiancés. Tomorrow it's just us.
In the very south of the Costa Blanca, a headland separates the Mediterranean Sea from the Mar Menor, the smaller sea. That's what this lagoon is called. Its water is particularly salty, which is why a very unique ecosystem has been able to develop here. The lagoon is also famous for its mud. At San Pedro, a particularly large amount of it has settled. And that's exactly why people come here. The silt is said to have very special healing powers. The recipe: smear the whole body thickly. And then leave to dry for half an hour.
My father says the mud is good for everything. Skin, bones. It keeps you young.
Yes, good for the skin and for the old bones.
I love the feeling. It gives me an extra year of life, and I don't have to go to the doctor anymore.
But the fountain of youth is in danger. Pressured by dense development, sewage and intensive agriculture, the Mar Menor has struggled several times in recent summers. Too little oxygen. Agriculture on the mainland side is particularly hard on it. Up to 5 harvests a year, and thus a lot of artificial fertilizer gets into the lagoon through rainfall. As a result, mass fish deaths occur time and again, as most recently in 2021. In the middle of the smaller sea is an island, La Isla del Barron, the Baron's Island. It is the remnant of a former volcano, a privately owned nature reserve. Gonzalo Quijano is the 5th generation of his family to run the estate. Actually, he lives in Madrid, but he goes regularly to his island to check up on things. Together with a caretaker, he's the only resident.
When I was 18, my grandfather put me in charge of the island. Someone in the family had to be the fool. It's a burden, but it's also a privilege.
The waters around the island are strictly protected. A very rare species of mussel lives here. Anchoring is prohibited, but a yacht is already moored there.
Good day. I am the guardian of the island, and I would like to inform you that you are in a protected area for shellfish. Anchoring is prohibited within 300 meters.
And where does it say that, please?
This is a shellfish sanctuary.
But there is no sign here.
They don't listen to me. They know very well that I have no authority. Only the water police have that. It is exasperating. The responsible politicians talk a lot, but they do nothing for nature. Sometimes I feel very alone with my efforts here.
He could alert the Coast Guard, but they are far away. Gonzalo's weekend cottage. He collects drinking water in cisterns and draws electricity from a solar panel. His ancestors created a small fantasy kingdom here at the end of the 19th century, based on historical models. Gonzalo likes to keep it modest.
My old jalopy. I've been using the moped since my student days in Madrid in the 60s. Even now that I'm older, it still serves me well on this island. Let's see if it starts up.
No stubborn motorized donkeys to see here. His island is just under 100 hectares. Nature is left to its own devices. The stark contrast can be found directly opposite on the headland. Completely built over, real estate developers would also like to build a vacation resort on barren island, over Gonzalo's dead body.
Because of the ghosts. So they know that we're here.
From here, you have a view over the entire Mar Menor. On the headland of La Manga, the high-rise buildings stand close together. The building boom began in the 60s with the onset of mass tourism.
There was nothing there, not a single high-rise building, only dunes, a treasure. And then they paved over the headland. What nonsense! Many have become millionaires as a result. But what for? You can't take money to the grave with you. My island should be preserved as a small piece of nature, exactly as it was entrusted to me, for future generations.
Gonzalo is looking for a worthy successor for his small empire. The responsibility is too great for his children and grandchildren. The Sierra Helada Nature Park. Here, nature is still allowed to be nature in peace. Much of the settlement is concentrated in the town just behind the cliff. The concept of Benidorm, height is better than area. In relation to the number of inhabitants, there is no place in the world where there are so many high-rise buildings. The side effect, the ecological footprint is smaller compared to individual tourism. Less land consumption, short distances. Even the water is recycled. The transportation means of choice here is the mobility scooter. But since too many young people were joyriding around on them, a minimum age for rental was introduced, 55.
It's too hot on the beach to walk.
I just like Benidorm, the weather. You know, you can't beat it. In England, it's always raining. Here, it's always sunny. So we do enjoy it, don't we?
There are 345 buildings with more than 12 floors. Outstanding is the Hotel Bali with 186 meters. The industrial climbers Alvaro Garcia and José Chavez are here to clean the windows on the staircase side today. These can only be reached by rappelling down the facade.
We need about 3.5 hours for one side. That's 750 window panes. Depends a bit on the weather. Sometimes we're also faster.
ralentizar más o ir un poco más rápido.
Their starting point, the technical floor under the roof. The roof struts and the pipes of the air conditioning system have to serve as fasteners. Each of them belay themselves at 3 different points. If a rope breaks, there are 2 spare tethers.
Of course, it is dangerous. We could crash, or there could be some other problem. You just can't think about it. Because once you start doing that, you can't do the work anymore. Then it gets complicated.
The last carabiner is set, and they're about to go over the parapet. Now they have to trust that the construction will hold.
There's always a bit of fear, especially in the first moment. Just before we hang ourselves on the rope. So now it's going to be exciting for us too.
His life is about to hang on this carabiner. The rope construction holds. The hanging party can begin. These narrow windows are cleaned only once a year, and for that, all variables must be suitable.
It gets difficult when there's too much wind. Also because the water then splashes back against the windows that we've just cleaned. That's why the wind is the worst.
That he would one day clean windows for a living was actually not his plan. After school, Alvaro began studying literature. On the side, he worked on building a roller coaster. A few years later, he founded his own industrial climbing company and literally left the world of books far below him. And as Benidorm grew in height, so did his company. He has 22 employees. They do everything where scaffolding is not enough. Painting facades, assembly work, cleaning windows. Suddenly, the wind picks up. It could be a bumpy ride from here on. A coffee break, however, outside at the level of the 43rd floor, is just barely permitted by the wind.
Drinking a coffee at a height of 186 meters. Not everyone can do that. And then also this view, priceless.
For Alvaro, that's better than a life behind a desk. Only about 600 windows left until the working day is over. La Isla del Barron, the private island in the middle of the Mar Menor. Owner Gonzalo Quijano gets a visitor.
Good morning, Emilio. How are you?
Emilio Cortés is a biologist at the University of Murcia. José Antonio is his boatman.
Let's go see how the mussels are doing.
Yesterday there were boats anchored here again. I can't do anything about it. Oh well, get in touch if you need anything.
Of course. See you later.
Emilio worries most for the nacras, large Pinna nobilis, or pen shell mussels, a species almost extinct in the Mediterranean. One of the last colonies lives in the Mar Menor.
We come here every week to check how the mussels are doing. We have located almost every single one with geospatial data. There are about 850 to 900 left.
Emilio's regular spot checks are much needed. His protégés are on the red list of endangered species.
I'm going to look over there because I'm worried about the boats that have anchored there. Let's see if the shells have been damaged.
The large or noble pen shell is one of the largest mussel species in the world. They reach over a meter in length and can live to be 50 years old, if you let them. Until 3 years ago, there were nearly 2 million specimens in the lagoon. Then the Mar Menor collapsed and the great dying off began. The remaining survivors live here, around the Isla del Barron. Emilio knows his mussels personally, so to speak. He has even numbered them. And there seems to be something wrong with this one. He wants to take it to the boat. Number 103 is obviously damaged, a still young specimen. A hole in the shell, most likely from an anchor.
It's dead. Here, write down the number.
Where the injury came from seems clear to Emilio, and so does the cause of death.
The shell has a hole, thus the mantle has become inflamed, probably by a species of bacteria that is widespread here, and particularly affects pinnipeds.
It had only just turned 9, a teenager, so to speak. Another mussel less, and that for an almost extinct species.
Unfortunately, I have not seen any young specimens for some time. That is what worries me the most.
Emilio wants to reproduce the pen shell mussels again in his laboratory. Costa Blanca, white coast, which in reality presents itself quite colorful. The limestone of the Peñón de Fac glows reddish in the evening light. And the cliffs near Benidorm shimmer in shades of yellow. Even the houses of Villa Lloyosa are at most occasionally white, but the tourism term Costa Blanca has long since become established. Even bright pink can be found on the white coast, the lagoon of Torrevieja. The color is caused by a type of algae that thrives in particularly salty water. The lagoon is a nature reserve and at the same time Spain's largest salt works. Here the salt is extracted underwater. A machine scrapes it directly from the bottom. The salt is loaded into barges, and then it goes ashore for further transport. The yield, 600,000 tons. That's how much salt settles to the bottom of the lagoon here in a year. Benidorm is also called the Manhattan of the Mediterranean. Playa de Levante, the eastern beach at noon. Peak hours for flying traders and also for pickpockets. On a hill a bit off to the side, the drone police are getting ready for their main mission of the day, now with heavy equipment. This drone weighs 17.5 kilos. It's equipped with a high-resolution camera that can monitor the beaches from a distance of over 1 kilometer, as if with eagle eyes. Because of the weight and size of the drone, Paco and Victor have to follow a precise procedure before takeoff. It's almost reminiscent of a helicopter takeoff, including a checklist for the pilot.
Tank?
It's full.
Camera?
Okay?
Payload?
Secured.
It's all about flight safety.
So much can break. The rotor, the motor, the electronics. Then the thing crashes. We don't want to take that risk. How do we do it? By checking every single part before the flight.
An onboard gasoline generator provides the power. Therefore, the drone can stay in the air for up to 2.5 hours.
You can start.
The drone is started like a lawnmower. And despite all the safety precautions, for Paco, it remains a suicide mission. Paco and Victor have revolutionized police patrol. Big drone is watching you. The research aquarium of the University of Murcia is a kind of Noah's Ark for the marine animals of the Mar Menor. Endangered species reproduce here as a kind of emergency reserve in case the ecosystem of the lagoon collapses. Some pen shell mussels were also transplanted here, as parents for offspring that hardly ever occur in nature. Emilio, the biologist, is preparing a menu for the mussels. Food like from Mother Nature.
We offer the mussels exactly the same food that they find in nature. To do this, we mix together various algae and small organisms. The food catches on and they grow.
Keeping mussels alive and reproducing them under laboratory conditions is a science in itself. Not only must the food supply be right, but also factors such as light irradiation, water temperature, and mineral content. It finally worked. The first offspring has appeared. This pen shell mussel is 1.5 days old.
The mussel is still in the first larval phase. It feeds with these filaments, creates a food stream that goes directly into the mouth.
Emilio's great hope is that the nacras in the Mar Menor will recover on their own, so he will never have to resort to his laboratory reserve. For Triana Bueno, the most important day of the Santa Pola City Festival begins in a beauty salon.
Hola, chicas. ¿Qué tal?
She and her friends have rented the whole salon to get themselves ready for the gala procession tonight. And to cover the traces of last night, the festival went into the early hours.
We are much more tired than usual because we lack routine. For 2 years, we haven't been able to celebrate. Besides, we're also a bit older.
They work as journalists, teachers, bank employees, and as managers. But on this evening, they transform themselves into Oriental princesses.
This day of the festival is the most exciting for us women, and the one we enjoy the most. We all get made up in the same way, and it's great to see our faces transform and glow.
They plant the makeup and their costumes long in advance, because every year Fila, the formation group, has to come up with something new.
Very nice, suits me.
And while the music groups are already warming up for the parade, Triana and her friends still need to rehearse in their costumes. They ordered the costumes from a rental company months in advance, and now they will find out how well they fit.
Make it tighter until it goes no further.
It fits well. Triana's friend Maria has the most important function. She will set the pace during the parade and thus keep the formation together.
For a whole year, our fila has been planning and preparing the costumes. They should be the most beautiful ones. We also want to stand out in comparison with the others. To a healthy competition. After all, in the end, it's not only about us, but the people in the audience should say, "Oh, what a beautiful dress! What a beautiful procession!" They should be amazed when they see us.
Almost every town on the Costa Blanca celebrates the festival Moros y Cristianos, but on different days. Practical side effect, the costumes can be used several times.
A bit like this, then it should be straight.
In a moment, it's off to the catwalk, the streets of the city. With Benidorm in their sights, drone police officers Paco and Victor are targeting two groups. First, thieves who steal from bathers while they are in the water. Secondly, beach vendors who offer their drinks on the black market. That is, without paying taxes and without being inspected by the health authorities. But they have to be identified among thousands of beachgoers.
Bathers usually move from their towels into the water and back. Beach vendors look for their customers like this, horizontally. It's so obvious, it almost hurts.
Their surveillance drone is about 250 meters away from the beach, but the two hardly miss a detail.
There! Let's get him! He's carrying a tray with drinks. He wants to sell them. He's not allowed to. Albatross for Eco Oscar. We have an illegal dealer on the beach, near to Avenida La Castellón. Our colleagues will now intercept the man and take his personal data. then he'll get a fine.
The flying eye of the law, invisible to those below.
No lo saben, no asocian que
They have no idea.
está en el aire, estamos muy lejos, ¿eh?
After all, we're far away, over 250 meters.
De donde estaba el vendedor. Intentamos que el sol, o sea, que el dron esté entre el sol.
We also try to maneuver the drone so that it comes from the direction of the sun.
No puedan verlo, intentamos.
End of service for the drone. Cheers amongst the ground staff.
Super flight. The drone is down again in one piece. Super. We're a bit exhausted, even though we are sitting in the shade. 59 minutes in the air. That takes a lot out of your concentration.
Off to the hangar on wheels. Tomorrow it will take to the skies again. For Triana and her friends, the most important moment of the fiesta begins now. Until that time, their preparations were secret. At the parade ground, they now meet the other filas, their competition for the first time. After all, the parade is a little bit like a fashion show, where it's all about who looks the best.
I have never felt so much excitement for the parade before. I have waited 3 years for this moment.
The parade had been cancelled twice because of COVID. Now, finally, people in Santa Pola are allowed to celebrate again. Triana casts a critical eye on the competition. It looks like they've splurged on costumes and makeup too.
The costumes of the others don't look so bad either. A lot of work went into them, and you can see that they made an effort. But we're proud of our result. Everything turned out exactly as we imagined.
Now it's their turn. The difficulty, despite the wobbly headdresses, everyone has to move in sync and in time. Maria, the lead dancer, has to set a strict example. The women stand in formation. Now they just need to find the right rhythm. Every detail has its meaning. The pearls stand for clarity, the feathers for strength, and the crowns for authority. There is no official competition, but judging by the applause, Triana and her friends do well. In the parade of 1,000 colors on the white coast, the Costa Blanca.